What is public policy? How relevant is it to our daily lives? The conventional understanding of the policy process is that, within a liberal democratic state, the citizens vote the politicians who represent and articulate their interests by crafting laws or policies on behalf of the citizenry. These policies are then implemented by the government servants who are deemed to be impartial, neutral and objective, and by extension represents the interests of the people. Often the policy process is discussed in terms of policy formulation, implementation and evaluation, forming a cyclical pattern, with a feedback loop, from evaluation to formulation. This is the linear process or the simplistic notion of public policy in a liberal democratic state setting. But the reality is far more complex. In reality, public policy process rarely follows this orderly pattern. There are times when policies do not pass the evaluation phase. Instead, politicians continue to formulate or craft laws or public policies again for implementation without evaluation by the citizens. So is public policy the same as policy? The answer is no. Policy is a law, regulation, procedure, administrative action, incentive, or voluntary practice of governments and other institutions. By institutions, private institutions or sector or companies are included. A company policy, for example, is a guideline to help employers dealing with employee accountability, health, safety, and interactions with customers. So, why study public policy? First, the decisions, actions or inactions of government affect us all. Public policy decisions emanate from government decision-making processes relevant to our daily lives. Imagine what would happen if the government would not regulate our traffic, would not regulate the school curricula, or come up and implement laws that are detrimental to our environment. Second, we should study public policy for purposes of scientific inquiry. This is to understand the relationships, or even causality of public policy decisions and how one decision may affect another societal issue. Let us say the government introduces a drug rehabilitation program in a particular area with the positive, intended outcome to reduce drug and substance abuse. Assuming that there is causality between crime rates and drug abuse, the local area experiences a reduction in crime. Based on that scenario, we can conclude that there were positive outcomes. One is intended, reduction in drug abuse, and the other one is unintended, reduction in crime rate, by government action. Of course, there were allegedly negative outcomes of this government action. Regardless, whether the outcome is negative or positive, we see that there is some causality of public policy decisions and how they affect another societal issue. Third, the development of professional expertise. Governments find ways to address societal issues and need skilled public policy analysts to formulate policies which will have a positive intended outcome. Politicians want to make the correct public policy decision with positive, intended outcomes and require an evidence base to support their decision-making. Let us now discuss some concepts on public policy. Renowned political scientist Carl J. Friedrich says that, public policy is a proposed course of action of a person, group or government within a given environment providing opportunities and obstacles, which the policy was proposed, to utilize and overcome, in an effort to reach a goal, or realize an objective or purpose. Meanwhile, another renowned political scientist, Thomas R. Dye says that public policy is whatever government chooses to do or not to do. On the other hand, William Jenkins views public policy as a process unlike Dye, who defines it as a choice, which presumes the existence of an underlying process but does not state explicitly what it is. Jenkins says that public policy is a set of interrelated decisions taken by a political actor or group of actors, concerning the selection of goals and the means of achieving them. Jenkins also improves upon Dye, by suggesting that the question of a government's capacity to implement its decisions is also significant. For him, internal and external constraints on government make public policy difficult. He also says that choices may be restricted by lack of resources, or domestic or international resistance. Jenkins introduced the idea of public policy making as goal-oriented behavior on the part of the government, an idea which provides a standard by which to evaluate public policies. For James E. Anderson, public policy is a stable, purposive course of action followed by an actor or set of actors in dealing with a problem or matter of concern. Anderson's statement focuses on what is decided instead of what is proposed, which he argues differentiates policy from a decision, that is essentially a choice among competing alternatives. Anderson acknowledges that there are non-governmental actors such as pressure groups that influence policy, but argues that it is governmental bodies and officials who still make the policies. It can be noted that policy decisions are often taken by sets of actors rather than a sole set or actor within a government. Policies are often the result of not only multiple decisions but of multiple decisions taken by multiple decision makers. Let us now ask our students, what is public policy?
Public policy is developed by governmental officials or agencies. It is a goal-oriented or purpose action, not random or chance behavior. Also, public policy is whatever government chooses to do or not. It can be seen the behavior of government officials and agencies.
Public policy for me is almost by definition. It is encourage some behaviors while penalizing others. As a result, people who gain or win policy is more likely to benefit than those who are ignored or punished.
What is public policy? Public policy can be generally defined as a system of laws, regulatory measures, courses of action, and funding priorities concerning a given topic promulgated by a government entity or its representatives.
Public policy is a government policies that affect the whole population. It is an attempt by a government to address a public issues by instituting laws, regulations, decisions, or actions pertinent to the problem at hand. Public policy is the principles, often unwritten, on which a social law are based.
Policy also to me is this is a place to address the needs of the people. They often broken down by into different categories as they relate to the society. For example, such as health policy, which are referred to all policies related to health, of course. Example of this is like AIDS or HIV.
For me, public policy is the broad strategy government uses to do its job, the relatively stable set of purposive governmental behaviors that address matters of concern to some parts of society.
Public policy is what the government does and how governmental decisions are made. Public policy determines the action that a government chooses to implement a policy.
There are different meanings or different definitions of public policy defined by different people or by different authors. As I've read, public policy can be generally defined as a system of laws, regulatory measures, courses of actions, and funding priorities concerning a given topic promulgated by a government entity or its representative. For me, public policy are the guidelines and actions that a government does. It includes all the government goals that they need to pursue. Through public policy, the government will meet the needs and the welfare of the citizen.
In my opinion, public policy is how do you deal with the public. It is the standard or measurement of the people in resolving public issues. For me, public policy is used to maintain peace and prevent chaos to the people, and also public policy is everything we had in our society that related to the government. It is how government take action in response to the public problem.
By nature, governments are entitled to enact laws, regulations, and execute actions that is beneficial to the general public. In retrospect, public policy revolves in laws, and laws are what drives the balance, peace, and order or a certain country or domain. Public policy is vital for us to learn and get accustomed in how government, may it be local or national, deals on solving underlying problems in their particular domains.
So public policy is a process as well as a product. It is used to refer to a process of decision making and also the product of that process. It is also vital to understand the significance of public policy. In this case, we have seen the public policy is focused on resolving public problems. It seeks to determine how issues and problems are defined, constructed, and resolved.
It refers to the rules, regulations, and guidelines developed by the government in order to solve the problems that affect our society. And it is also a collection of tasks taken by the government to solve or utilize the challenges of our society. Public policies are developed and implemented with the ultimate goal of benefiting the general public.
The public policy is the means through which a government maintains order or responds to the demands of its citizens through constitutionally mandated activities.
For me, as a student, public policy is a combination of a laws of regulation action, policies, and a lot of other factors concerning a given topic. Such public policies of a nation are shaped over time by education, advocacy groups, influences of the lobbies, and the conflicting interests of a special interest group.
Policy is made by anyone. In an organization have their own policy, and even in our house we have our own policy. But when we are talking public policy, it is specifically in public. It has affiliated rules and regulations, implementing guidelines to strengthen the public policy and for the people to obey and to follow.
For me, public policy is a set of rules, guidelines, and acts that governments adopt and implement in order to benefit the general population. Public policy can influence things like which laws are passed, where funding is located, and which issues are interests of the public. However, public policy is more than just keeping campaign statements. Policies are frequently contested and negotiated between parties with differing interests, and can also include parties that aren't members of the government.
A public policy is from the word policy. It is an action. A lot of different actions and perspective that is developed by our government to respond and to create a solution to different problems in our country. Our government public officials are the ones who create or mandate a policies for the good of the citizen. Because without these policies, everything around us will be a mess.
Public policy for me is a collection of laws, mandates, or regulations established through political process.
A public policy has a number of key attributes. There is policy which is made in response to some sort of issue or problem that requires attention. Policy is what the government chooses to do or not do about a particular issue or problem. It might take form of the laws and regulations that govern a particular issue or problem.
Public policy for me, it is simply known by the means in which government maintains order or addresses the need of citizens, sure defined by its constitution. Public policy might have take different procedures like legislation, executive order, or official acts, and it is a guidance for action. It can be a positive one or negative one. It contains some evident activity, and it is a description of government and non-government.
Public policy refers to the accepted rules, regulations, and laws enacted by the government in order to ensure the public safety and well-being. It was established in order to provide justice to people and protect them from those who seek to exploit their innocence. Also, public policy is one that reduces the number of crimes and homicide by enacting various sanctions for those who seek to break the law or violate human rights.
What is public policy? Public policy, it is developed by the government officials or agencies. It is the broad area of the government laws, regulation, court decision, and local ordinances. It is the process through which a government maintains order or respond to the demand of its citizens by taking acts that are outlined in its constitution. And it may refer to what government intends to do to achieve certain goals.
Public policy is an institutional guidelines of a government to maintain order, to solve real-world problems, to address public issue, and to address the needs of its citizens in terms of education, health, social welfare, and any actions that defined by its constitution.
Public policy is the action of the government in response to the public issue or public problem, and it helps also to the betterment of the society in a certain country. Public policy are in place to address the needs of the people.
For me, public policy can be generally defined as a system of laws, regulatory measures, courses of actions, and funding priorities concerning a given topic promulgated by a governmental entity or its representative, and this can be shown in any society. Governmental entities where laws are enacted, policies are made, and there is allocations of resources. In other words, public policy is the disciplines of understanding what it means for society when a government does an action.
In my own opinion, public policy is a new discipline in many countries to developing world, while countries like India are warming up to it. Non-profit organizations, consulting firms, and national organizations, and government too are equally looking for groomed professionals to join.
Policy is to solve relevant real-world problems implemented by the government as a response to social problems. Public policy is a form of law that governs a particular issue or problem. Public policy imposed or followed to achieve specific goals. It is implemented both public and private sector. In the government sector, the government is the authority body to mandate a democratic process to make policy and enact laws.
Public policy refers to an institutionalized proposal to solve relevant problems, guided by a conception and implemented by programs as a course of action, created and or enacted, typically by the government in response to social problems. There is a need to study public policy in order for us to be equipped with the knowledge of examining how political processes create essential programs that work to change the society. Public policy focuses on the decisions that create the outputs of a political system, such as transport policies, the management of public policies in the health services. This includes also social services.
For me, public policy is a way to address pressing issues in the real world. The following are the various types of policies that must be followed by a group of people. First in line are educational policies. Second are agricultural policies. Third are urban policies. Fourth are health policies. And fifth are defense policies. And so on. These policies are typically irrelevant to a certain segment of society. This policy was enacted by the government and should be followed by all members of the group, because if one person fails to follow the policy, the person should be punished. Individuals who violate the law.
Public policy is a mixture of laws, regulation acts, policies, and a variety of other elements related to a specific topic. We've seen that public policies are the government's collective acts, laws, rules, regulation, judgments, case studies, and government programs are all examples of public policies.
For me, public policy is the best described as the broad area of government laws, regulations, court decisions, and local ordinances. Today, government affects all aspects of our lives. Everyone has a stake in the public policies enacted by federal, state, and local governments. Public policy can be generally defined as a system of laws, regulatory measures, courses of action, and funding priorities concern a given topic promulgated by the governmental entity. Where laws are enacted, policies are made, and there is allocation of resources.
Public policy. Public policy is a policy in which the government made for the citizens. It is very useful for the citizens because if there is no policy, our society will be in chaos. The government made public policy for us to follow rules. It is good for the citizens for us to know what is right or wrong, the do's and don'ts. But some of the citizens did not follow the policies, and that's why government made it. Politicians implemented laws so that If citizens will not follow rules, there will be consequence for those who did not follow.
So for me, generally, public policy is a set of rules, norms, and acts that governments establish and implement in order to benefit the general population. Public policy may influence things like which laws are approved, where funding is allocated, and which issues are of public interest. Because public policy is so important in creating a society's norms and values, it's an integral component of governance and politics. It's an essential and effective method to get your opinions heard, since public policy is produced as a collaborative effort involving governments, institutions, and even ordinary individuals. The term public policy refers to the government's acts. The government's choices are intended to address problems and improve the quality of life for its citizens.